we're talking about a Lucas Erceg that starts. So Lucas Erceg for 6 innings. We're talking about like closer level stuff for 6 innings.
Eno Sarris from The Athletic joining us right now. Also, check out his Rates and Barrels podcast that they've talked about Roki Sasaki. We're about to talk about him. Eno, good to see you. I was like, please can we get Eno on? Because I read your article about Sasaki, but I'm going to throw you a curveball that you will like. Can you remind everyone what you said about a year ago about Shota Imanaga?
Oh, yeah. I said he was going to be worth his contract. He's going to be as good as Yamamoto, maybe. Would be one of the best signings of the offseason. So, I mean, I think that's where some of the science of pitching has come really far. Is we've identified really good shapes of pitches. We've identified what good stuff is. And, Shota has that great ride on that fastball. And it really proved to be, and he was a great signing. The Cubs did a really good job of that.
Hey, Kratz, should we have him pick up his mic and just drop it to start here? Some people had him thinking he was going to be out of the rotation in a couple months. And, Wrigley, he can't handle the ballpark, blah, blah, blah. Eno comes on our show and he's like, I think this guy's got top-end stuff. And he had a freaking dynamite first year.
He's feeling it, though. Look at him. He's like, yeah, I did. Like, I don't even need to drop my mic. So I have to say, since you're all arrogant over there, anybody, see, now you're surprised that I called you arrogant because you got, before we get to Sasaki, is there anybody whose stuff you look at and you're like, how is this not working? Because analytics, it's kind of, scouting, everyone's like, they screwed that guy up or, they picked this guy. Analytics is the same way. And the way we're evaluating pitches is the same way. There's misses. So who's a miss that you're like, this should change?
I think one of the biggest misses for my model has been Graham Ashcraft. He throws really hard and he throws 2 really good pitches. I think the problem is he only throws 2 pitches and one's a cutter and one's a sweeper. It's like he basically a one-pitch pitcher because one's good for lefties, one good's for righties. So I think that's a big part of it. When you look at, last year's stuff leaders, nobody really sticks out. Cutter Crawford and Tanner Houck really scored really well. And some of the time they had some struggles and they had some good times. I think Fenway is a really tough place to pitch. If you look at Cutter Crawford's home and away splits, it's a big deal for him. I don't think he's figured it out quite yet. So, generally, good stuff rises to the top. There are guys, Hunter Green was a guy who had great stuff and bad results, but then last year he kind of figured it out. So with starting pitching, you start with good stuff. Sometimes it takes a couple years to figure out how do I put these things together? How do I get guys out, second and third time through the order? How do I, kind of put the pieces together?
Or it could take like 8 years, like Sean Manaea, and just say, I'm just going to change everything mid-season and do some crazy thing, which we can ask you about if we have time later. But I do want to get to Roki Sasaki here as the headliner. So you see that he gets posted. You start analyzing what you can use from what we saw at the World Baseball Classic in terms of collecting data and anything that you've been able to see and collect from overseas. Add it all up, and what do you think? What do you think he's going to look like in Major League Baseball in 2025?
I think on the top end, we're talking about a Lucas Erceg that starts. So Lucas Erceg for 6 innings. We're talking about like closer level stuff for 6 innings. It's not the best ride, but it's really great velo. He was sitting 99. He was sitting 100 in the WBC. He's sitting 98, 99 in Japan. That's the top end, is just like closer level stuff for 6 innings. He has lost some velo and he's lost shape. And he's had some physical issues while he's been over there. So it's not quite the slam dunk of a Yamamoto or even a Shota because, on the lower end, he's more of a Gavin Williams, sitting 96, 97 with a kind of a 2-plane fastball instead of a real like a rider like Shota has. So, it's more of a Gavin Williams with a plus forkball. That's the range. And it's still a really good range. So that's why everybody's interested. Also because they're going to get him basically on a minor league contract. He's going to be like under team control for 6 years. So that's another reason. So if you could get somebody that could be Gavin Williams or basically be a 6-inning closer, that's why everybody's interested.
what's his value if he's not a minor? If he were, I know it's hypothetical, but what is it? Do you value him based on what everybody saw from Yamamoto this season? Do you value him that he would be worth more, that he would be a better pitcher, or is that last year's health concerns and velo drop him down below what Yamamoto was coming into last season?
Yeah, I mean, you got this idea of like a platform year, like what did you do your most recent year? And he's Gavin's, I mean, I'm sorry, Gavin, I'm calling Gavin Williams now. Roki's not coming off of as good of a platform year as Yamamoto. He's not showed as good health. So I would not give him the 300 million that the Dodgers gave Yamamoto. I might give him something like the DeGrom contract that the Rangers gave him. I forget exactly what it was like two something. I might still give him a two something because it is really exciting stuff. He is young, and you just hope that basically you get, if you have him for 6 years or 7 years, you get 4 or 5 really great years out of him. And maybe 1 year where he has Tommy John or whatever. So that's the math I would do is not quite the 300 million.
Well, for DeGrom's deal with Texas, he is at, I believe it's 5 years, 185. So do you think that's more the range that?
Well, he's younger than that, so maybe like a 6-year version of that, like a 6 or
Well, my question is, even if you don't have him in Yamamoto range, it's the age, right? He's so young. I mean, he's a couple years younger than Yama. So if he was just able to be a total free agent at this age, he's what, 22 or 23, I think? Yeah, 23. Wouldn't he probably still get a 10-year offer from a team, and even if the average annual value is lower? So, because DeGrom,
you just never want to hear the word shoulder. It's I don't know. Maybe that's an old idea, but the idea before me is like an elbow you can fix, the shoulder can lead to really bad outcomes. I mean, when we talk about shoulder capsule, like Brandon Woodruff just had, or labrum surgery, those are still the kind of surgeries that have worse outcomes. So, shoulder soreness is something that will turn some people off. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's a 10-year version. Maybe it's like a 250, 10 and 250. I don't think you put the 300 million on him just because he hasn't shown the same longevity as Yamamoto's, the same sort of, stuff being the same for 3-4 years.
All right. So I've, go ahead.
No, go right ahead. You were moving. I'll go after. Go ahead.
No, I'm just going to follow. So I wanted to know, in terms of preserving the shoulder, and obviously it's a young arm who had that perfect game where he threw like almost 200 pitches or something. He's had some of those crazy numbers where they beat up arms in high school sometimes in Japan. It's almost like the old school, D1 college coaches would do. So my question to you is, now we fast forward to him being in the bigs, whether it's with the Dodgers or elsewhere. Should he kind of demand that he's a once a week-ish guy, part of a 6-man rotation? Because that seems to be working for some of the guys that they're bringing over now, right? I mean, I know they still got hurt, but Kodai Senga did that essentially in his first year with the Mets. Yamamoto had extra rest on every start this year. And again, I know that they got hurt, but it does seem like trying to push a guy like that into a 5-man will not work.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. People point to Japan and say, well, they have such better health outcomes. What are they doing better? But I think one of the things is they don't throw as hard as they do here in America. And I think there's a real link between how hard you throw and how many injuries you get. And if you get these top end guys that are from Japan that are on these 6 days, they still get hurt. They're the ones who throw the hardest. They come over, they still get hurt. So the interaction between rest and how often you pitch and injury is something we're still trying to figure out, I think. But I do think that, you're talking about what he's been comfortable doing. And if you could make him comfortable doing that going forward. What I would say is, though, with injuries in baseball, it's really hard to come up with 6 starters. Like how many teams have 6 starters that they want to throw out there every time? If you throw him, in a 6-man rotation, that means also that you get less of him. You get less of your ace, So, one thing the Dodgers have done is like, it's not really officially a 6-man, but they like use rest days and they like kind of, try to science it all out. I mean, you could do something like that where he's on a 6-man rotation, but everybody else is on a regular. I mean, it does cause problems, but it's such a boon to get a guy like this in that contract that, everybody's going to be like, hey, yeah, we'll make it work. Whatever you want. That's the kind of meetings they're having. Whatever you want, these are our resources. This is how we can make you better. Whatever you want to do, we'll make you comfortable. It's the same thing with when Shohei went and shopped around at the different places. They're giving him the same kind of pitch. This is what our city is like. This is where you might feel comfortable. These are our teammates that are coming to give you their pitch. And then these are our resources. This is our, technology, and this is what we can do for you.
So yeah, that you talk about that 6-man rotation, that would be tough. If you do it just for him, everybody else is going to have to move around and change their whole thing going forward. But I want to ask you this question about him, like, so people can understand. Talk about his arsenal, what he throws. Is he deceptive? Like, what are the types of things that are going to make him successful in major leagues over here?
Yeah, it's raw. I mean, when he's at his best, it is raw gas. I mean, he's going to gas you up. I mean, like I said, he sits 100 on this fastball. It's a 2-plane fastball like Gavin Williams has, and then comes off of that with a kind of what's called a gyro slider. So it's not a huge movement slider. It's just a power bullet slider. The thing that we don't know how will come over, but mostly the splitters that have come over from Japan have fared better here because the ball is different here. And what we've seen is people like Hisashi Iwakuma told me that when he came over from Japan and started pitching in Seattle, he threw a splitter like twice as much in America than he did in Japan because with the seams the way they were, it was better here. So, if that's true, he's going to come over with something that will probably have a nickname, something like the fork, the ghost fork that Kodai throws. So you can imagine somebody that might throw 97 like Gavin Williams does, throw a nice little bullet slider it's better than any breaking ball that Kodai Senga throws, and then throws a Kodai Senga ghost fork on top of that. That's where the promise lies. That's why it's so exciting.
This holiday season, I want to give a gift to my loved ones that makes them feel special and unique. That gift is StoryWorth.
Here's how it works. Each week, StoryWorth emails your loved one a thought-provoking question that you get to help pick. Things like, what's the bravest thing you've ever done? And what's the farthest you've ever traveled? All your loved one needs to do is respond with a story. Long or short, it doesn't matter. After that year of fun, StoryWorth compiles those stories and photos into a beautiful keepsake hardcover book that you'll be able to share and revisit for generations to come. This is the perfect book to pass along at family gatherings or read with your kids. It is beautifully orchestrated by StoryWorth, and that's why it has more than 35,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot, with millions of stories preserved since they were founded over 10 years ago.
With StoryWorth, I'm giving those I love most a thoughtful, personal gift from the heart and preserving their memories and stories for years to come. Go to storyworth.com/foul and save $10 on your first purchase. That's storyworth.com/foul to save $10 on your first purchase.
Do you think that there are teams that might try and tweak the fastball and or the slider based on what you're describing, right? This guy who is capable of maybe changing the pitch shape of his fastball, which many others have been able to do. And it could be the same type of deal with the slider. Because, right, that's the thing nowadays that we're seeing from guys where you're like, all right, this dude can throw really hard. Can we teach him to tweak this so that it becomes more of a dangerous pitch?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I noticed right away is, he doesn't actually have great whiff rates on the fastball. And people have kind of said, oh, well, that means he has bad shape on the fastball. But then I looked at his heat maps of where he's throwing the fastball. And in Japan, they tend to throw the ball lower in the zone, looking for more contact, looking for more ground balls. They don't pitch to the strikeout the same way they do in America. So I think immediately one of the first coaching things that'll happen is, hey, let's elevate that fastball. Even if it's a 2-plane fastball without as much ride as some other guys, you're going to get more whiffs at the top of the zone with that fastball just by elevating it. So I think that's one thing they would do. And then, yes, they could maybe coax some more vertical movement out of that pitch as well. I don't see anything from his slot or his mechanics that says that he couldn't. He's not kind of a low slot sinker guy, So there's a couple ways that could be. And as much as, the kind of technology advancements are, proliferating in Japan, it's still a little bit more advanced here in terms of the technology and the science behind pitch movements and pitch shapes. So I do think that part of the presentations, what Roki Sasaki's hearing right now, part of that will be, hey, here's our plan for making you even better. Here's our plan for taking your fastball and making it even better. So I think that's something he'll hear right now.
Another pitcher who had a pretty good rookie season, Luis Heel. I want you to, go over, express to me his year. What's your thoughts on his first rookie year and how you think he did with everybody else?
Yeah, I mean, there's another guy with gas, and he's a guy that's stuff plus. My stat over at Fangraphs loved from the get go because he's got ride, he's got a nice power gyro, and then he's got one of those like power, King Felix type power changeups. That's a ton of movement. The only flaw that I see in his game is command, and that's something that's been a problem for him in the minors. This year, it was pretty good. And I think to some extent, he has such good stuff that he can kind of throw to the middle of the zone, let the movement take it away from the heart of the zone, and not focus too much on dotting the corners. But one thing I do see that he likes to do is he likes to throw that changeup, which has plus movement at righties, right on right. And that's really confusing for a lot of hitters, and it's a good way to get guys out. It's also a good way to hit batters. So that's going to be something he's going to deal with is can he improve his command of the slider so that he can go more to slider against righties, or is he just going to get more comfortable next year and be able to dot the stuff a little better?
All right, so let's finish with this free agent market starting pitching question. Have you done some decent analysis yet on maybe one name that you really like where when we see that signing, as long as it's in, a decent money range, you're going to go, they got a good one there. And then one on the other side, obviously looking at, go wherever you want if you've got names already in mind, but, Burns and Fried and Minaya and Kikuchi and Montas and Evaldi, et cetera, right? Severino down the line. Are there any guys that, maybe one you like, one you don't like?
Well, I did just write a piece on The Athletic about guys who could start this coming season. That were relieving last season. So Jeff Hoffman, I think, is an interesting name because you could sign him to something like the Jordan Hicks deal where you say, hey, if he's our setup man closer and we got him for 3 and 35 or 3 and 40, that's fine. That's a fine outcome. But if he's, one of our starters for that money, then we really did well. So I think the Jeff Hoffman signing will be by a smart team that will give him a chance to start again. A lot of the reasons why he didn't do so well last time was Cincinnati, Colorado. Also, his arsenal was totally different. He throws totally different pitches now than he did back then. So I think Hoffman's a sneaky smart one. I think that, I think I'd be a little bit worried with Jack Flaherty just because, when I see his splits, above 94 miles an hour, he's a totally different pitcher on the fastball, and below 94, it's a totally different results. That makes sense because 94 is the league average fastball now. So if he's falling behind, and that's something that generally happens to pitchers. I think when you put up that thing earlier about the older pitchers and who did well, the guys with the big wide arsenals do well. That's how they age well because they can start throwing, all these different pitches. Think about Zach Greinke near the end. He wasn't the best pitcher in the world, but he had like 6 pitches. He could do anything. He could put them anywhere. That's not what I see out of Flaherty. I think he's mostly like a 2-3 pitch guy. So I think that might be one that I would maybe try to avoid a little bit. Corbin Burns, I think, is, reminds me a little bit of Garrett Cole in that like he's been a stud in terms of innings. You can point to some reduced stuff, but I think he also has that potential to really widen his arsenal as he goes. He started throwing a sweeper near the end of last year that he didn't really throw that much, but it was great, and I think he has that touch on breaking balls where he can be cutter, curve, sweeper, gyro slider, just be a guy who has like 5 breaking balls. That's kind of what Max Scherzer was doing when he was nearing the end of his career. So I'd like Corbin Burns at the top of the market. I think he's going to be worth the money.
Those are some good calls. Yeah. Corbin Burns, you watch, you're just like, yeah, he's different. He can, even if he needs later in the contract, transform himself, the whole deal. So good call. Yeah, I thought about Reynaldo Lopez too from last offseason when you said Hoffman, and then Nate Evaldi, who has 5-6 pitches, uses them all as long as he stays healthy. But Yeah, good stuff. Eno, thanks for jumping on. Appreciate the time. Everyone, check out his work in The Athletic. Give him a follow on Twitter. Check out his podcast, Rates and Barrels. Appreciate it, Eno.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.